Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second edition of the COSI Science Festival. It is our digital version. We are so happy to close today, the last day, with an incredible group of stunning individuals. We're going to have a one-on-one interview, and today you don't get to see my face, but you get to hear my voice, so you're probably more pleased with that. But more importantly, the two special guests we have, one none other than Astronaut Douglas Wheelock, going by the coolest name called Wheels, as well as the impressive Dr. Marla Pérez-Davis, who is the incredible director of the NASA John Glenn Research Center. And so before we get to the interview with you, NASA astronaut Doug Wheelock, aka Wheels, Dr. Pérez-Davis, I have to say, I've had the privilege of working with incredible people through my career, and you're such an accomplished person. You're such a general role model. But on top of that, later on, that you're a woman and a person of color. Just my first question to you, someone who's gone to top universities, gone through the ranks, and now you're heading up the famous John Glenn Research Center for NASA, which of course is named after Ohio State's great legend astronaut John Glenn and senator. How does it feel to be a female at the top of the space administration game?
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here today to briefly speak with you during this virtual science festival. I wish we could be all there in person, but it's great that we're still able to learn together online with all the exciting and interesting content that COSI made available this week. Back to your question. Speaking in this kind of event is, one of my passions and the things that I really enjoy. It is not just about what you do, but how you can help others. So for me, is not, personally, obviously is a great accomplishment, and I'm very proud and humble about it. But it's about what I can do for others. I think, this idea that we are part of a generation that is really going back to the moon, this time to stay. The fact that we also have this great goal of having the first woman on the moon, that is pretty amazing. That is, one of a kind opportunities, and I'm very humble and honored to be leading a center that is leading the power, the propulsion, the communication, all these things that you need to make sure that we have the right technology to take the astronauts to the moon, to Mars and beyond in a safe way. So I am a very unique position, but I'm looking more in terms of how I can motivate all of you that are online to become one of those scientists and engineers that are going to make this happen. That's the dream. That is the goal that we have.
Well, that's fantastic. So while I know you're from Puerto Rico, you definitely got your master's degree at Toledo, which is fantastic, and then your PhD from Northwestern University, which is incredible. We had the pleasure yesterday of talking to someone you know very well, Administrator Jim Bridenstine, and we talked about all the cool things. And so I want the listeners to know that you're overseeing one of the several amazing research centers, the John Glenn one, of course, up in Cleveland, and you are in charge, I believe, of over 3,200 staff members and a budget of almost $1 billion. You mentioned you're here to motivate the youth. Talk to the youth, and especially the girls and the persons of color, how perseverance makes a big difference and that we can achieve all of our dreams.
So I think, one thing that you have to keep in mind is you got to prepare yourself. Things don't come for free. We all know that. So you have to work hard. One thing that I learned, back when I was in, high school is don't let anyone tell you that you cannot be something. If you have the passion, if you have the desire, and if you're going to put the hours and the effort, you can achieve whatever you want. No one can limit you. So I will say an education is very important. The things that are you doing, like today, being here and listening to us, is the first step. You want to learn as much as you can in terms of what is really what you like. What are the things that the subjects, the areas, and why you like that. And be in contact with people that can help you kind of frame what you have to do to get there. It takes time, it takes effort, but if you put your mind to it, you're going to accomplish great things. And we need you. You are the Artemis generation. You are this generation that is going to make things happen. Several years from now, we're going to have people living on the moon. We're going to have people traveling to Mars. you are that generation that is going to capture the imagination of the next generation. But more than anything, you're going to build and pretty much build, not just build, but also be part of the development of the technologies that are going to help us take, like Doug back, all the astronauts back to the moon, travel to Mars in a safe way. And at the same time that we're doing that, those technologies find a place here on Earth. It's not just about what we do for space. It's also how that technologies can help us help others. And it's space, but it's also aeronautics. How we can have more planes in a safe way in the airspace. How we can go from having an airplane that right now use fuel to be an airplane that is all electric. Imagine that. Imagine being able to go faster to different places instead of taking 10, 12, 20 hours. You can go from point A to point B in 3 hours. Imagine that. Those opportunities, all of that is part of you. You are going to be that generation that is going to be making that happen. I have no doubts about that.
I love that. And for you folks listening, remember that key phrase. It begins with imagine that. If you can imagine it, it can happen. You're listening to the Digital COSI Science Festival in our second year, coming to you from Columbus, Ohio, but beaming with the pleasure of the partnership with NASA all around the world. And I do want to say you were our lead partner last year, so it's so exciting to have you all, to have Administrator Bridenstine yesterday and to have you both today. I do want to give a shout out for our sponsor, Battelle, but especially our special sponsor, CAS, that helped to put this on today. And with that, I want to turn it over again to you one more time, Dr. Marla Pérez-Davis, the director of the NASA John Glenn Research Institute, to introduce our other special guest.
Well, it is an honor, and I'm very pleased to introduce astronaut Doug Wheelock. He is a native of Windsor, New York, and holds a Bachelor of Science in Applied Science and Engineering from the United States Military Academy in West Point, and a Master's in Aerospace Engineering from Georgia Tech. He is a retired Army colonel and helicopter pilot who has logged more than 7,000 hours in 46 different rotary and fixed-wing aircraft. Doug was selected as an astronaut by NASA in 1998, and he has accumulated more than 178 days in space after flying on shuttle mission on STS-120 in 2007 and serving as flight engineer for Expedition 24 and commander for Expedition 25 to the International Space Station in 2010. With that, I am very pleased to welcome astronaut Doug Wheelock. Doug?
Thank you very much, Dr. Pérez-Davis. Marla, it's wonderful to join you, and thank you for that wonderful introduction, because I still feel like a little kid, when we talk about flight and all these different possibilities that hold our imagination captive as we look to the stars. So it's a pleasure to join you, Dr. Bertley, and all the folks listening in. And I would love to spend some time talking with you about flight and not only flight in our atmosphere, but flight into space as well.
You got it, astronaut Wheelock. And can I call you Wheels? I know I said
Yes.
that earlier. Can I call you Wheels? All right. So aside from having the best nickname ever, hearing your bio, a lot of people listening, myself included, we've done a lot in our lives and we feel pretty proud. But listening to your bio and Dr. Pérez-Davis' bio, I feel like I've accomplished nothing. Having said that, we get to hear about you. And I know the burning question that everybody wants to hear, listening to the Digital COSI Science Festival and having this rich experience with all our partners. We want to hear from you as someone that spent dozens, if not hundreds of hours in space. What's it like being in outer space?
Wow, this was a long journey for me. It was really, really crazy because I grew up as a little boy from an ordinary place, ordinary little town in upstate New York on the west slopes of the Catskill Mountains. And when I was a little boy, we put people on the moon during the Apollo era. And so I would dream of living on another planet, of exploring the stars, and of flight as well. And so I didn't find out until years, that happened, of course, in the summer, July of 1969. I remember watching it on a little black and white TV. And my dad had told me about places like NACA and places like Huffman Prairie, where the Wright brothers, their field of dreams down there near Dayton. And so I grew up with these images, had never stepped foot in an airplane until I was 18 years old, but I had this dream of flight that came alive for me back in that tiny little town. And we went into school that next school year, and we had a brand new teacher. Her name was Christine West, and she was from the big city of Albany, New York, which is the capital of New York State, of course. To us, it was a big city because she came to this tiny little country town in this country school, and she had big dreams. And she had big dreams for us as well. And she came in and she said, "Who saw the moon landing?" I raised my hand, and she said, "One day you could do that too." And we all thought, like, this woman is crazy. It's like she has no idea where she is in this tiny little town, this tiny little place, this ordinary little school. And, for years, I went through my life just this pursuit of flight. I wanted to experience what it would be like to fly. And it was years later. In fact, I was an astronaut. Years later, I was 3 days as an astronaut when I first met Neil Armstrong, and of course from Wapakoneta. And so my knees were shaking. They're kind of shaking right now when I think about this day, because I had been an astronaut for 3 days, and here I am, a chance to ask Neil Armstrong a question. And I wanted to know, I remembered how I felt as a little boy, just with these crazy dreams of flying, never dreaming that one day I could fly into space. And I began to reflect back on my teacher, Christine West, when she told me one day you could do that too. I kept thinking back through my career, thinking like, I wonder if she was right. I wonder if she was right, that if we really can accomplish these things that captivate our imagination and the curiosity of our mind and the wonder of our heart. And so I sat there with Neil Armstrong and I said, I wanted to know how he felt as a superhero, And I said, Mr. Armstrong, when you were on the moon, did you have a chance to just a moment to reflect on what a profound moment it was in human history, how this was going to change everything for us, And he said, I did. I thought about that. I thought about the engineers that built that rocket. I thought about that button I had to push to get off the moon to go home. And I thought about my teachers. And I thought to myself, how does an ordinary little boy from Wapakoneta, Ohio, end up standing on the moon, And we all kind of laughed, and he laughed. And I thought to myself, wait a second, that's a familiar story. And the reality is that we're all just ordinary kids from ordinary places, with these extraordinary dreams that we have for ourselves and our profession and the dreams and goals that we can achieve. And so flying in space was like the pinnacle of what I could only have imagined. And I still am not able, you can see this image that's on your screen now. Floating around in space, of course, is very euphoric feeling. You can float around through like Superman. Even outside, this is an image of me on the end of the robotic arm doing a spacewalk where we had an emergency pump that failed, and so there were 16 days where we had to come up with these unplanned spacewalks to go out and repair the space station. Kind of a scary time, and I rode on the end of this arm, and the thing that you can see mechanically the control of the arm, and our boots are locked into a foot plate, but everything is floating, and including you inside of your suit. So you can't actually feel the bottoms of your feet when you're floating in this suit. And so it's kind of an unusual feeling. It's a feeling of euphoria, but it's a feeling that your body and your mind begin to adapt to quite rapidly, actually, when you get to space. And then the readaptation when you come back to Earth is actually much more difficult than actually going to space. And so the body, after 6 months in space, tends to readapt. Now, what I had a chance to go to the windows, and I believe in this next image, there we go. This is our windows on the universe. This is the cupola on board the space station. And when you follow the astronauts that are flying in space and taking all these wonderful images in this cupola, we've got these oblique windows that kind of look at the big window in the top kind of looks directly down toward the Earth, and then the oblique windows kind of give you the perspective of where we are in our solar system. And so some of the imagery you can get from these windows, I did some of my best poetry writing from this vantage point. You can see me inside the window there, but you get these beautiful views of the Earth, and the Earth in the expanse of space is like this explosion of color in this vast empty sea of darkness. And so it's very all the systems, your heart, mind, body, and soul are kind of like captivated by this experience of floating or flying in space. And so when I looked out, now there's lots of things that you look out, and we're orbiting the Earth, of course, here. And the first thing that jumps out at you is that thin, like razor thin line, blue line, that's our atmosphere. And that's the next breath for all of us. It's the thing that keeps us different than the other planets, it protects us from different things, and it provides the air that we breathe as well. And so that is such a fragile blue line. And you can see, and then when the sun goes down, this Earth in the daylight, we're orbiting once every, you saw the speed limit sign in the first image, at 17,500 miles per hour. It's roughly 5 miles per second. I'm at my home up here by Cleveland, and I think we're about, let's say, 100 miles from Columbus. So in a spaceship or in the space station, it would take us 5 miles per second, only about 20 seconds to get from Columbus up here to Cleveland. So quick flight. But this is by night, we're orbiting the Earth once every 90 minutes. And so every 45 minutes, we get a sunrise or a sunset, really quite dramatic, and each one different than the one before and the one next as well, and equally as beautiful. And when the sun goes down, now this is a picture of the sunrise just coming up, and you can see the mosaic of light of our city lights. You can even see the red circle there is Columbus. You can see the washed out spots where there's no light, of course, are our Great Lakes. You can see Michigan and Huron and Erie, and you can see the cities of Columbus, and you can see down to Dayton and Cincinnati, Indianapolis, Cleveland, Toronto, Detroit, Chicago, and you can't even, even from space, you can't see the border between Michigan and Ohio either. So, but the mosaic of our cities and towns across the landscape are quite dramatic.
Folks, these images are spectacular. You are listening to the Digital COSI Science Festival, year 2 of our Science Festival, beaming straight from Columbus, Ohio to around the world. I have the pleasure of speaking with NASA astronaut Douglas Wheelock. Those images were amazing. I do want to say 2 things. One, between your message about the expanse and possibilities and how we're all regular, I do want to say you are now wearing a cape just like your hero Armstrong. Well done. We have a series of questions that I want to get to from the audience. I don't have a ton of time, but before I get that, just one more question. I know you know a lot about the Hubble work, and I want you to share your experience around that because, again, this is COSI, the Center of Science and Industry.
Sure.
And while I'm currently the president and CEO, one of my predecessors is your colleague, Dr. Kathy Sullivan, who is also a NASA astronaut. In fact, she's the first American woman to walk in space, and she had a lot to do with launching the Hubble and fixing that problem. So just really briefly, if you can talk about that, because I do want to get to the questions from our audience.
Absolutely, Dr. Bertley. Actually, Hubble is, of course, we've all seen the images. I think I have an image of Orion here. So this is an image of the constellation Orion that our astronomers shared with us when I was on board the station. And it was actually a lesson for us in perspective as well. Now, the Hubble Space Telescope was just an amazing feat of ingenuity. If you remember, the Hubble's been up, for over 30 years now. And so when the Hubble first went up, the first images we got back were blurry, if you remember that. And so we thought, like, gosh, we're thinking about the spherical aberration of the mirror. Could we have been off in the measurements or the smoothing of the mirror? And so our great scientists and engineers across the globe, led out of Goddard Space Flight Center, and our astronauts that repaired the Hubble came back and said, like, hey, listen, this is this is a great exercise in overcoming adversity. So we got these images. They're a little bit blurry. They're not quite what we expected, but we know the ins and outs. We know the aberration of the mirror, and we can develop a series of algorithms and a way to sharpen this image. And so all the data are there, just like a digital image. Even though it's blurry, all the data are there, right? So we had great scientists and engineers with a lot of ingenuity and creative thought develop these algorithms and a repair for the Hubble Space Telescope. We took that up on a repair mission, plugged that in, and now we get these amazing image. The image you see on your screen, well, this one's the constellation of Orion, and it reminds us, and then this is the Hubble Deep Field image. If you remember, there was a spot, if you hold a dime at arm's length, there's a spot in the night sky, the spherical night sky, where we couldn't really find anything of light projecting through there. And so we had all of our ground telescopes kind of trained on that area, couldn't come up with any kind of images. We pointed the Hubble toward that spot in the sky, the size of a dime at arm's length. And this is the image that came back. And it's estimated that there are 1,500 galaxies in this one image. And so it opened up the perspective of depth to our dreams and to our ingenuity as well. And it was later on from that technology that the people that developed MRI imaging machines said, hey, wait a second, you can take a blurry image and you can run it through a system of algorithms and you can make it crisp and sharp like these images coming back from the Hubble. We need that technology in the medical field. And so it really kind of led to a spin-off of the next generation of MRI imaging machines, which is the magic of NASA. And it's really not magic. It's the curiosity and ingenuity of the human imagination. Exactly what you capture at COSI is what we capture and captivate at NASA as well. We know that the magic of spaceflight and all these wonders that we develop in technology comes from just a spark of imagination, a spark of ingenuity in one field of science. And we can take that and build on that spark and that creative thinking, and it can become revolutionary, and sometimes and oftentimes in a completely different area of science or technology. And so in this case, in the case of the Hubble, we took a breakthrough in mathematical algorithm and optics, and we turned it into a revolutionary technology in the field of medicine. And that's the magic of NASA. And as young kids out there from ordinary places, it's just curious mind, a heart of wonder, and there's no telling the places you can go. And the sky, by the way, is no longer the limit, because there are boot prints on the moon. And so the limits of your imagination are the only things that are limiting you as well and your achievements.
That's spectacular, folks. You are listening to NASA astronaut Douglas Wheelock, aka Wheels, coming to you live from the COSI Digital Science Festival, beaming from Central Ohio to around the world. I got to tell you, you talk about the magic of NASA, and think about that, folks. They pushed out this telescope way in space, had a little hiccup, and they were able to repair it. I have trouble fixing my bicycle or car in my garage, and the magic of NASA makes that come alive. And we heard yesterday from Administrator Jim Bridenstine about exactly what you said. It's not just about space exploration, which is fantastic on its own, but the technology and the things that are brought back to planet Earth to make our humans great, keep us and our society safe and wonderful and healthy are outgrowths of the magic of NASA. But all of us, to your point, can become magicians if we dream, imagine, and work hard. I got to pivot to the audience. I don't have a lot of time here. We got about 4 minutes left, but I have to get 2 questions in. One comes from none other than 5-year-old Brinley. So astronaut Wheelock, this is from 5-year-old Brinley, and he wants to know, I'm mega interested in outer space. What is something fun I can do home during quarantine that is space related?
Okay. Actually, treat your home where you're quarantined, like I am in my home. Treat it like your spaceship. Okay. So treat it like you're floating around in space. You're orbiting the Earth in your own spaceship. It might be a house, it might be an apartment, whatever it is where you are. Now take a look around. Just like an astronaut on the space station, take a look around. You probably have crewmates. And Brindley, if you're 5 years old, you probably have maybe mom and dad, or maybe some brothers and sisters that live in the house. And oh, by the way, you might have a pet as well. So when I tell you to look around at your crew members on your spaceship in your home, so think about little kids, little kitties and little dogs as well. I have my dog Lily. She's my crewmate in our spaceship as well. So you think about it, and sometimes we have things delivered to the home, right? That's just like we do on the space station. We send up resupply capsules that bring food and clothing to our house. And then if we're going to go outside on a spacewalk, we want to make sure that we put all the protective gear on, because there are some dangers out there now that we're trying to keep from coming in contact with this virus that happens to be at this time. So you may want to put a mask on, or cover your skin, or whatever, and maybe we keep our social distancing as well. And so another fun thing you could do, Brindley, is put together a jigsaw puzzle. I don't know if you have a puzzle in the house, but what's happened to us now as a society, as Americans across the globe, actually, is the beautiful picture we had of our life is now like a jigsaw puzzle cut into 1,000 pieces, and it's dumped out in front of you, and the box is taken away. So if you have a puzzle, or if you can order a puzzle on a resupply ship to your space station, get this puzzle, dump it out on the table, and then take the box away. And then all these things that you have to do to put this beautiful picture together, you don't know what it looks like. So you start with the corners, right? You start with the corners, with the edges of that puzzle. So that's a fun exercise you can do as well. And this is some of the training we do for our astronauts as well, to prepare them for space flight.
That is awesome. Those are two great things, Brindley. I hope you picked them up. One more awesome question before I get to that. COSI may be closed to the public, but clearly we are bringing science and engineering and incredible programming, not just to Central Ohio, but now through NASA and through CAS around the world. The last question, and you're going to have to be brief, Astronaut Wheelock, but I have to ask this because it's coming from Maggie, who is 10 years old. Now, remember, Maggie, you can be inspired not just by Astronaut Wheelock, but by the director of the John Glenn Research Center, who you heard earlier, Dr. Marla Pérez-Davis. So her question, Maggie, who's 10, wants to know, what kind of things did you have to do to prepare in space? And I'm guessing she's preparing herself to be an astronaut like you.
Absolutely. Great question, Maggie. Thank you for that. And yes, there are no limits to what you can achieve as well. You saw earlier Dr. Marla Pérez-Davis she's the director of the Glenn Research Center up here near Cleveland. And I'm working for Marla, and she is a terrific example of what you can achieve, even though you feel like you're just an ordinary kid in an ordinary place, because everything that you have in your mind and in your heart, you can achieve those things as well. So some of the things that you can prepare, okay? So the things I encourage students of all ages and kids of all ages as well to prepare to fly in space, or to the first start off with a curious mind. Be curious about the world around you, okay? Just be curious and ask lots of questions, because that's where all the great scientists and all the great explorers, it started with just a spark of curiosity. They wanted to know about their environment. So be curious about the world around you, and then find something you love to do. And I know you're only 10, but there are probably things that you love to do. And it's really kind of cool to think about when you love to do something, you're usually pretty good at it. And so discover something you love, and then as you go through your schooling and as you go through your growing up years in your neighborhood or in your family, start doing those things that you love to do, and do them with so much passion. Study them, read about them, write in a journal about them, how you're progressing to achieve your dreams, and then live your life with so much passion that people can't take their eyes off of you. That should be your goal. Now, it doesn't matter if you're a teacher or a police officer, or you're a lawyer or a scientist or a doctor. It doesn't matter your profession, or an astronaut. if you work and study so hard that with such passion that people can't take their eyes off of you, you're going to achieve your dreams in record time. And so just stay focused on the things you love to do, be kind to others, and you'll be off to the stars.
Maggie, I'm sure you were taking notes. That was some great advice from none other than NASA astronaut Douglas Wheelock. We are at the close of our program. I want to thank astronaut Douglas Wheelock. Listen, I say it, I mean it. The community means it. That cape that you saw on Armstrong has absolutely rightfully been passed on to you. Thank you for being the rock star that you are. I want to thank CAS for helping us put this program on. This is the second annual COSI Science Festival, digital edition because of coronavirus. I want to thank all the team at COSI for helping make this come alive. The Science Festival continues today. Go to scifest.org. Find out all the amazing stuff that's happening at the at-home Big Science celebration. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again, Astronaut Wheelock. You are awesome. I'm motivated. I'm going to try to steal that cape from you, but the last word is yours.
Dr. Bertley, thank you so much for letting me join you. And before I leave, I need to do this. O-H, can I get an I-O, please?
I-O.
Awesome. It's great joining you. Now, remember, I know that especially children listening in, or kids of all ages, actually, that that when you're listening in, oftentimes our lives seem ordinary, but just remember, I mean, this, especially here in Ohio, we're walking among the greats here, down the Wright brothers down in the southwestern part of the state, and all of our great science going on in Columbus and around the state at Glenn Research Center, and even the town of Sandusky, where our Plumbrook station is, the hometown of Thomas Edison. So the greats have walked these same wooded trails of Ohio. And so I wish the very best for you, that you accomplish your dreams as well. Thank you so much for letting me join you.
You got it, absolutely. And that last shot of that Ohio State flag was actually on the International Space Station for the last 10 years, folks. Remember that. Brought to you live from COSI, beamed around the world and to outer space. Thank you, Astronaut Wheelock. This is Dr. Frederic Bertley, President and CEO of COSI. Enjoy the rest of the Digital COSI Science Festival.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate the invite. Thank you.
You got it.